Hey everyone. This episode, I talk to Aidan Molloy. I'm talking to him about Simon Wardley's value chain mapping. It's a technique to identify the way forward for your product, service, company, which first, as with most things, helps you identify truly where you are and then figure out where it is explicitly you're trying to get to. The thing about this episode is that we are discussing a tool that is very visual in nature. So I would suggest before you listen to this episode, you may look in the show notes and review some of the sites. Now, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, but just so that you can see exactly what it is we're talking about and what it might look like. I know myself, I would be extremely distracted just trying to hear a somewhat complex visual tool being described by the two of us. So, in fact, I'll actually put an explicit link for showing you exactly what it is that we're talking about. And then that way you can just look at that specific link and then come back and enjoy the episode, or potentially look while you listen. So, it really will be useful to view that before listening, but it's still a good episode, and it's a really interesting journey of how Aidan went through and created the value chain map for his team and their work. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Dave Albert. In this show, I talk about technology, building a company as a CTO and co-founder, and have guests to discuss their roles in technology and entrepreneurship. Today, we're joined by Aidan Molloy, a senior product manager at Workday. We'll be talking about the Simon Wardley value chain mapping. Thanks for joining us, Aidan.
Hey, that's no problem. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm currently a senior product manager from the platform and infrastructure team in Workday. Actually, it's my second year anniversary next week.
Congratulations.
So yeah. Time flies in here. So, it is one of the best places to work. So we're all having fun. But yeah, I guess we're here to talk about the kind of value chain mapping from Simon Wardley. I have a huge interest in it. And feel free to ask questions, or do you want me to just...
I guess probably the best thing would be to start with, since we don't have any visual aids on an audio podcast, then maybe just describe what it is, and then I'll act like I don't know anything about it. I did read your article twice and do research, but I'm going to talk to you on behalf of the audience, so... All right. That's my code for, I know I'm going to sound like an idiot. So there's a reason for it.
I'll start with, so when I joined Workday, I joined as a product manager for a component called Grid. So, but I find that I think people sometimes underestimate, moving job from, so I was previously in telecommunications where that would be quite a different, but they kind of had similar infrastructure challenges, like everyone was talking about OpenStack, Kubernetes, where the industry was going. But from a product manager point of view, to come into a different technology stack, so you're coming from a telecoms background and into a kind of what Workday does, which is kind of financial and ERP type solutions, you needed to kind of understand quickly how the product got to where it is today and where they wanted to go in the future. So I was, curious to learn, like, what would be the best way to learn about the product's history. Now, one of the principal developers on the team, Ian, was talking. He goes, "Hey, have you heard about this guy, Simon Wardley? He's talking a lot of sense." So Simon has Ian pointed me to this kind of like a Google talk from Simon called "Crossing the River by Feeling the Stones." So I sat down and watched that, and it was actually eye-opening. So what Simon's trying to say is, you need, like, the term map. Like, it was ironic, as a product manager, we define roadmaps, yet they're not a map, right? So when Simon was saying, he looks at, I thought his best thing was, he gives an example of a Greek, Themistocles, and he was wondering, should he, how better would you try and win the battle? Would it be with a map, or would it be with a SWOT diagram? And I think that when it comes to business, you need to understand the landscape of where your product sits against the competitors. And I found that was the kind of thinking that should be around, like, a kind of it's an art of war, really, trying to have that you'd need a map to kind of outline your landscape and where you need to go. So what I did here was that we sat down with the team and we outlined, what decisions were made back then. So in the blog, we talk about, developers were really cool we wanted to go to AWS as quick as possible, make their lives really easy. But not everyone's a developer. There's business decisions to be made, and customers had a risk averse nature. And that's completely, that was not just, I think that was every industry, right? There was always, that one story about this outage, and we're not going there. That's crazy. Yet, everyone's own data center was always, falling over, and they just never thought about it in that sense. So I find that was very interesting. We were able to plot out. Now, I took Simon's mapping as a kind of you're able to do what you want with it, because my personal belief is around getting the discussion started about where people think the product is in their life cycle. Like, so the map itself, right? So has two axes. Yeah, y, X and Y. But on the X axis, you'll have the value to the customer, right? The customer need, and how visible it is to them. So if you're doing a website, that the landing page is probably the most visible to the customer. And then you need to think about the maturity of that product, right? So are you building? So the good old days of, like, a customer building into each customer data center, and they all have little variations, and they're all custom built, and long term that's kind of not sustainable. So you can see, when Simon talks about the kind of modeling, he shows why cloud makes a lot of sense. Like, you can see, it takes away all the pain of, like, those long upgrade stories that we've had from different vendors, and that everyone kind of gets onto the same person. I thought that was, it's very good when Simon goes through, shows you why. Now, I know he's a big fan of serverless, but that's probably a discussion for another day. I just find it really, like, when you see a map in action, you see when you map out the different components that you believe are in your product, and get the team talking about it. Like, the one thing that I found was that the team had different viewpoints about where they thought certain, the certain age of a product was. So I thought it's good to flesh that out and get alignment on the team as well. So
it's a really interesting way to get into it.
Yeah.
So to kind of give an image for the listeners of what the map looks like. Now, of course, I'll add in links to the blog post and a few other resources for listeners in the show notes, but as they're listening now.
Yeah. Well, like, you can picture any map. Like, a map has an anchor. For example, which way is north, right? And which way you need to get to. So you kind of, a lot of people in business and strategy aren't thinking about where they're going. I think there was some statistic around like 67% of businesses just copy what other businesses are doing. I find that was, everyone's doing the same thing. And I find that really interesting. But like, I think Simon said it best, that a lot of people are playing chess, but they don't know they're on a chessboard. So, and I hope I'm doing him credit with these kind of paraphrasing, but I think he's right though. Like, there's a lot of companies that need to, sit down and see where they are, not just in terms of the product they deliver, but in terms of the actual overall business and landscape that they're in, and like where they want to end up in and what challenges are in the way. So like, a lot of companies now would be moving, ironically, like, let's say, for example, you could see that moving to the cloud, solves a lot of challenges because it removes, so in the map, you're getting, compute and power and all the other things, as a commodity, right? So in the maturity model, they're commodities, and you should only try and buy as much commodity as possible, because building custom solutions causes you a lot of longer term pain, and there's an evolution to it. So, I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, so to give an idea of so the vertical index.
Yeah. The vertical is really around the visibility and the value to that customer, right? So what's the interaction points? And actually, who is the customer? Like, it's kind of ironic when you're building a product, you're like, who actually uses it? When you deliver a back-end product into a support team, but you don't think that they're the customer, it's like, who's physically day to day using this product? And that was kind of one for me to think about when we were designing the map. Like, we talked about there's like an integration platform, but I don't necessarily see the end customer. I see the teams that deploy on the platform. And that was kind of where we had to focus. What are their needs and what value? Like, what do they see? They only see the integration platform. They don't see the underlying infrastructure that we provide. So that, that had less value. And it was kind of less mature. Like, you can see on the map, like storage, for example, like the end customer didn't really care about storage. Like, they just care about, when I run an integration, it will run in X time.
Yeah.
That's all. That's the kind of value you deliver. That's your, I guess, an SLA. That's really what you want to show your customer, right? So the storage, like, the other thing about power and kind of compute, like, those things are way off. So you shouldn't be spent time trying to reinvent. Like, there's a great example about, you're opening up a coffee shop, right? And you want to sell toast. Should you build a toaster? So, and some people have tried to do that, go down that kind of model. And that's when you kind of have to think about who's your customer and what are you trying to deliver and how you're going to get there quickly. And I thought that's a great example to show. Like, so
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then so across the horizontal axis, you start on the left-hand side with Genesis, then custom built product and commodity.
So, I think everyone's first product is in Genesis, right? You're the first customer, and it kind of grows over time, and you kind of see where it is in, like, for example, there was a time when, like, you think back to computing, there was like everyone could build their own computer, and now you kind of reserve instances on AWS, and you don't need, like, it is a commodity now. That's where it is on that kind of maturity model. Like, you think back to the 80s and 70s. Even before that, when stuff breaks, you have to go fix it yourself. It's, very specific to you problem. And now you kind of see that it's no longer your problem. It's still a problem, but it's much less of a problem. And that's kind of where in the maturity level of, say, computing, that will kind of display on the map. So
it's unlikely the majority of the people who are in the, quotes, DevOps world are ever using a soldering iron.
Exactly,
or an oscilloscope.
Yeah. And like, it's funny you mentioned DevOps, because you can see from the map that move to kind of cloud, like full cloud and even serverless has spawned that kind of DevOps model. So, like, it's really around how quickly can I get my server back up and running, right? And you can see like 20, 30 years ago when a server broke, you had to ring someone, you have to order a server. It takes weeks. Now we're down to like seconds to replace stuff. And that's why you need a different type of model to run your business. And I think that's where like you can see how that DevOps model came about from that. So I find that's another interesting thing of how the tooling has changed, and that's making us like a different level of how we work. That I find that really interesting.
So you mentioned when you were going through building your own map, that you had different members of the team involved. Who wasn't involved necessarily that you think could have been much more valuable? So like how high through the, long day. I'm losing words. The people who care about things. Stakeholders.
Oh, stakeholders. Yeah. Well, the thing that my exercise was really, I wanted to know the kind of, first of all, I wanted to know how to map, right? So that was, and I felt that the product that I was managing at the time was kind of a nice one because it's been there since the start of Workday. Like, how does it, what challenge, like every product has kind of very difficult challenges before they kind of scale. And I found that was really interesting to find out. So when we talk to stakeholders, the grid is a platform, right? So it literally has a platform full of APIs that service teams can call to run integration. So an integration is, a job that runs on a computational grid in a certain sense. So, like we knew that was fairly well mature by that stage, right? So we knew we have a set of APIs, but there was a time when we needed to figure out, like say, I think it was 2010, like how, like the first customers getting on it, how do we solidify the API? How do we make, so that was much more custom, right? So we were getting the customers onboarded. How do I move solidify the platform and the APIs so that becomes much more of a product offering?
Yeah.
So once you get to that phase, then the scale starts happening because you don't need to be focusing on each individual customer. Like Amazon isn't, and I keep mentioning Amazon, but like they're a prime example of like, they have a massive cloud computing platform. It's, it scales because they don't have custom. They have, it's one size fits all for everyone. Not in terms of the varying CPUs, but the same process for everyone. And that's why once you got to that phase, we could see large amounts of scaling involved. And that kind of scaling then brought in different challenges, right? So, different types of use cases appeared from the platform. And you can see that with like any big cloud provider as well. They provide a platform. You're seeing these all new business types come out of, there's businesses that run completely on like Salesforce or Amazon. And that was the same with Grid. You can see different types of use cases that appear based on different needs, right? So you could then tweak the platform for running, say, payroll or some other small integration. So that's kind of where we're at. So, yeah.
So maybe a good way to ask the question, let's say you're going to come hang out with me and my company for a week?
Okay.
You think that's how long it would take? Like if you were to come in fresh, a week, 2 weeks?
So we did it over to do a mapping exercise.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think 2 days, 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
So I went to Simon's map camp in Edinburgh, last year, and it was just really good. Like it was like a really small conference, but it was just 2 days. It was it was 1 day actually, single day. And he explains mapping in the morning, and the afternoon is like a session where we went through kind of a use case example. And it just makes you think about, going through it. Like the best thing, if you had your team in the room and figure out what exactly you're offering to your customers, where you think that is, and can it scale, right? So I don't think you take a week, but you could definitely take 1 to 2 days.
Okay.
I think it's really around once you have that starting point of like, where are we in this space? And there's different types of maps as well, right? So like mapping your individual components within your product. So like we're using a MySQL database, we're using whatever, or you can map out where your business fits inside the kind of competitive landscape, like who your competitors are, what do they offer their user? How do I differentiate myself around that? So just mapping that out, I think, is a win for any company. So.
Okay. And so you just start first by like listing out the different areas that you provide the value to your customers on.
Yeah. Like it's like, do you ever, like, you should ask yourselves, like, what do I provide my customer? What does my customer see? Do you know what I found funny was that, like, a development team would develop a feature for your product, but they would never know how it's being used. Like, and you think that feature is really important, but when you actually go out in the wild and see, hey, no one's using that, and that's why a lot of people talk about this, like, don't be building features just for the sake of building features. Like, find out what your customer and your user needs are and go after that, because, that's what it really should boil down to, around the anchor about what your customer needs. So.
Okay. Did you have any missteps while you were trying to define that yourself?
We did. Yeah, I guess it was really around, like, defining who our customer was. So, we kind of had different teams, but, like, we had customers from the start, but, like, sometimes people forget that, support organization, like, they're your customer. Like, you're building, we have a platform for various teams, but, like, we need to support this. Like, people need to support the platform. Like, how do you make a much more usable, supportable platform for your environment operations teams? Like, that was kind of one for me to say, they're also your customer. Like, no one ever thinks about them. You deliver a piece of software and everyone's happy, but, like, when you go home, there's a 24/7 team that has to make sure that stays up. and they, you need to talk to them and say, hey, like, how can we make their lives easier? And you should consider them a customer. So, like, on our kind of mapping journey, we had to think about them, like, what did we deliver to make their lives easier? And that's what really it was kind of an interesting, I remember one developer saying, like, he never actually thought of, like, he just thought of support as support. He didn't think of support as, like, a customer of what we're delivering. And once we thought about it in that mindset, it made us a lot more, like I always said, like, we don't want to be on first name terms with support. That's a good thing. Yeah. And they will like us more if we have that approach to delivering software. So, but yeah, the mapping was the one thing I found. There was one mapping we were doing around, like, say, for example, a SaaS company versus a traditional on-premise company, and why people move to the cloud, right? And we had a kind of brainstorming session, and you think it's because of cost, or you think it's because of something else, like they don't want to buy hardware. It's actually, we found out that it was like, maybe it's the upgrade process, right? Yeah. Maybe customers, the entire upgrade process, due to the fact that everyone has custom software, that's why, going to the cloud sounds cool, but it actually makes a lot of sense, when you map it out and go, the customer won't have to do upgrades anymore. Like, it's not like a huge sales engagement where they come on site and they're like, hey, there's a big contract, because the longer that software stays on premise, the longer it diverges from the other sites.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I found that was revealing. I was like, it kind of makes sense when you think about it, but when you draw, like, the fact that we had to think about it, I think that was the win, right? So I was glad for mapping in that we're able to see just how, customers are thinking about it. It was I thought it was interesting.
Have you helped any other teams within Workday on the same process? Yeah,
so it's funny. We, when I published the blog, we had a little, like, mini roadshow inside Workday. I found it very strange that everyone had kind of heard of it, but not really delved too much into it. And I think that was a case of, like, people had an interest in it, but sometimes people just don't have the time. And I just think it was a real value for customer facing teams and like even the grid, like just finding out what, I was trying to, like, here's, for example, right? We went around to, some people were like, why are people using Kubernetes, or why are people moving to the cloud? You could see that if you drew a map and show, Kubernetes allows us to deploy on any kind of cloud infrastructure. It's an abstraction layer. And once you could kind of draw that up there and show, hey, this makes a lot of sense, I think, so we've done a lot of, kind of mini roadshows, showing those examples about why it's important to map out your products, both internally and externally. It's a good exercise for the team as well. Like, it's just really something to really consider, because I think strategy is sometimes lost on teams. They don't know. You need to always ask yourself why you're building that feature or a product, and to show, trying to map it where that product fits. And I think that's really good for like junior developers all the way up to like VPs to know why you're doing something. So yeah, and why you chose different technologies. So, yeah.
So this was posted back in April. So I guess you were working on it in February, March.
Yeah. February, March. There was an ask to do a blog post, and I can usually put my hand up first, going, I can write about something, and it came to pass that I was like, I really want to write about the how we use the Wardley mapping. I just find that just to show like that people are like, it's incredible how it's taken off. I think Simon is quite humbled by it all. I started February. It was just a good learn. Like I said, hey, I'm going to do this blog on how we map things. Might not be correct. It's very scary when you're doing your own blog, but doing your own blog for a corporate blog, that's a bit different. So a lot of people were happy with the direction we were taking. I was a big fan of making, it's a credit to the Grid team. They've built an excellent product for the last 10 years, I think. Like to get to the scale that we're at today, like that doesn't come cheap or easy. And trying to show that how they made the right decisions over time, and how, you can see that we're focusing on Kubernetes now, and I'm hopeful that that's the right choice. I think it is. So yeah, it was good to like 8 weeks where we just making words on paper really, and getting the maps to a certain, like, it's really hard to, like, for me, it was like telling a story. Like, I wanted the reader to go, oh, okay, I understand. Like, and I wanted to tell other product managers, like, don't be nervous about moving into a different industry. Once you can hear the story about how the product gets there, I think you'll be able to fit in just fine. So, yeah.
So how long until you think you'll have to make some additional amendments to keep it up to date?
It's a good question, really. It really depends on the type of map you have. So I'd hate to say it, it's not like a Gartner Magic Quadrant. Yeah. It's not like that, but it is. It should be revisited periodically, because maps do, like, the landscape changes, and that's kind of a big thing. And that's, I think, one of the points that makes the landscape is always changing. Right, even your competitors, but in the kind of underlying technologies that we use, like, that's another one to think about. Like, and that's why I find that the varying levels that you can map out your things is incredible. Like, you can go down to the lowest level up to the highest, nation. I think, it's that kind of, like, down to what kind of language we're going to use to write our code, for up to, which cloud provider we're going to deploy on, like, and then even higher, like, what kind of competitors are out there, what industry we're going to go at, where different industries are going. Like, it's a really just good exercise to make yourself more learned, I guess, about what's going on in the industry and why certain companies make certain decisions. That's kind of
Was there anything specific that after having the map, you were able to remove from the kind of the expected work over the next bit, or add that no one anticipated?
Yeah. So the map kind of validated our assumptions, that for one, we were on the right track. So as a product manager, that's great to hear. In the blog, I mentioned that the grid is essentially a scheduling platform, and, Kubernetes itself is pretty good at scheduling. So maybe we should focus our efforts there on a community of 30,000 developers. So that was kind of why we felt, and it was also around why people are using Kubernetes, right? It's not just the new cool thing. It actually solves a lot of pain.
A lot of pain. Not all of it, though.
No, not all of it.
But a lot of it.
A lot of it. It solves, the scheduling kind of issues. It kind of standardizes the underlying platform that we're going into. We can, everyone's offering Kubernetes now. I'm surprised at the amount of people that are offering Kubernetes now, and everyone's got their own flavor. I'm glad that it's kind of staying vendor neutral, and I think I think infrastructure folks are just tired of endlessly customizing stuff and having these horrible spaghetti deliveries. They just want to know, here's Kubernetes, here's how I schedule my containers. What we did notice was that, the move to Docker and how we move to kind of containerize workloads, that was definitely the right decision for us. And you can see that with AWS offering a similar product called Fargate, I think.
Yeah.
Companies are looking for this kind of solution. So I don't know. What's your experience of Kubernetes, Dave?
We're using it. It's our production environment, and it's great. So we're using Azure.
Okay.
And we're we're in the middle of the migration to AKS, which is the Azure Kubernetes service.
Yeah.
When we installed it originally, that was still in preview. And so you had to use ACS, which was the Azure Container Service that used Kubernetes.
Oh, yeah.
But the hosts are static. So there's no way to do a migration to a newer version. So once we get on AKS, that should make some things easier. I
knew this would descend into Kubernetes.
Yeah. But I mean, I was able to, in about a day, maybe 2 days, take our existing Docker containers that were running in Kubernetes that we'd been deploying with YAML files, some Helm charts, but write a maybe 50-line Python program that just our Bitbucket pipelines send a webhook to, and now every time we commit to master or merge to master after a pull request, it just puts itself in test.
Yeah, we found that those kind of improvements have been excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it's you wasted a day. Yeah. Except every other time I was doing a deployment, it was 4 hours. Yeah. So, I've saved myself 4 hours every time we ship.
That's why when we're doing the mapping of different technologies, you can see, even if you do the history of computing and data centers, and think about most companies are software companies. They're but they're also experts in data centers, right? Because they need to build their own data centers. They need to build, and they kind of dilute the whole, what's the offering to the customer? Workday customer doesn't see all the good and really great effort that goes into our data centers. They just see everything's up.
Yep.
And that's where we talk about the map about, they only see the web page, or they only see the, but behind that is a team of brilliant engineers and developers who make sure that and that's why you can see that sometimes companies go, we need to move to AWS, continue to scale, and to give, there's plenty of work to do inside our data centers. Keep us going for many, many years. But a lot of customers we see now, like, are asking about AWS and Azure, because they ironically are already in AWS and Azure, and that kind of, anyway, yeah, that's right. I just find that really interesting. But I kind of get worried about, is everything going to be on the cloud? I don't know. But that's something.
Just for those non-technical people, the cloud means someone else's computer.
Yeah.
That's all it means. Someone else has that hardware in a data center somewhere.
That's the key, right? So yeah. I don't have to worry.
Exactly.
It's like renting a car. I don't need to worry about it. I just pick it up, use it when I need it. And that's what I always took the cloud to be. And that's why you can see in mapping away, it makes more sense from a utilization point of view. So, from if you own a data center, you can see that that's a sunk cost. You have to pay for it. With a scalable cloud infrastructure, you can spin up and down and reassign workloads. And that's why, when in terms of mapping, you can see why a lot of companies have moved to that model. Like, it just makes, you only pay for what you use. I think that's huge for business.
Yeah. Virtual instances don't depreciate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So every time you spin up a new one, you get the newer hardware. I mean, obviously that depends on the provider, but if you've built your infrastructure right, pushing a button will migrate you to the new hardware.
Yeah.
It will fix the bugs. So what was the last?
Foreshadow or
might have been thinking about one even older than that, but yeah, so if your whole virtual plane has a bug, how do you fix that without bringing down your entire data center?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you're on the cloud, if you're on someone else's computer, it's their problem.
Yeah.
And you just kill that instance and bring up a new one, and there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I sorry if we've rambled. I knew it. Once I start about Kubernetes, I just kick off. So,
All right.
But I believe Simon has some map camps coming up in the UK.
Oh.
And I'm actively trying to get him to come to Dublin.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Because it's like, just a bit, maybe I'll go back about a bit of history about Simon. So Simon he joined Canonical, where they used his mapping technique to pretty much make Ubuntu contain over 80% of the cloud market OS. So, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a case study for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can show, there's a number of publicized maps on his Medium page, and you can show time and time again, why it kind of makes sense. I know there's been some criticism about it. I think there's a Wikipedia page about it.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
The fact that you get people in a room to talk about where you're going as a product or a company is a win, regardless of maps or no maps. I think that's really important. And so I was just trying to show, how, just to think about the bigger picture and what you're missing, and you always have to iterate, because I know you're going back to that question around how often should you update your map. When I think about that question, you should be checking, it's really about how quick your competitors can move in the market, right? So if you're doing a competitive play on your map and you're seeing what others are doing, you need to be constantly looking at that, right? So let's just say, I don't know, the IBM Red Hat acquisition, how does that change them in a mapping kind of sense? What do they now offer their users? And you map that against, I don't know, Oracle and Amazon and the others, and to show how they move their offerings into a more mature, more valuable, kind of offering to their end customers, right? So I find that, sometimes you see acquisitions and they go, why did they make the acquisition? It's really around their customer needs and what they can offer. So yeah, and you can see that through sitting down and mapping IBM's history. Not that they're going to do it today because they're a really old company, so it'll take a while. But yeah, that's where I just find it pretty interesting.
Have you considered trying to use this process in any other area of your life?
No. I should though.
I'm totally stealing from, using a personal Kanban type of theory.
I think you could probably, actually, there was one from Jay Bloom, I think was his name, and he was saying about Gordon McDermott or Gordon McMahon. So I went to the Scottish Map Camp, and there was a presentation there. I can send it on to you.
Yeah, please.
He was on about how they. So he works for JP Morgan, and he was showing how he had to manage different teams' skill sets and where different skills were on the map. So like some folks weren't good at such a thing, and how do I make them much more of an expert, and what once I make them an expert, they're much more higher value to my other customers. I'll have to dig that up for you, but I found that interesting about how they applied mapping to like person's skills, and where you could focus on. So like what do you offer as a person, and what skills you have, and what skills you're like are unique to you, I guess you could say, and what do you need to actually, I don't say commoditize yourself in the same way. But
well, there are certain elements of what you do that should be commoditized.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what outsourcing is all about.
Well, that's exactly. But I think write that down. I think I can dig up a map for you around. I think his name was Gordon. I'll send you on the link. But it's really interesting how I thought it was very cool how he applied it to people, and what skills they had, and how he assigned different groups of teams. And you could see certain teams are missing such a skill, and how could they learn off each other. And I found that was very interesting. So
I have to be careful myself. It's like the old adage about when you learn a new design pattern that you then inflict it on every program you write. So I have to be careful when I learn new techniques for optimizing life that I don't make everything try to fit that.
I need to. I'd hope I'd have some custom unique skills on the map. So if they commoditize product management, like it'd be, you could just buy it off the website.
Yeah, I really doubt that. It'd be hard to commoditize something that is different in every single situation.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Although, I don't know. Yeah. Don't know. So are there any other elements that we should cover that are beyond the visual elements that I'm sure some people are probably still trying to wrestle with understanding, which I don't know how I could paint pictures any better than what we've done so far. I apologize. Well, what I might do is ask that they look at an image of it beforehand.
Yes.
So I'll throw in a bit of a caveat before listening to this episode.
Like, the more people that I would just be happy if people went on to Simon Wardley's Medium page and just read that. I know there's another gentleman called Ben Monsieur who is on Twitter along with Simon, who are actively, showing people how they do mapping and, what benefits they can get out of it. It is gaining popularity. There is actually a map camp Slack group that I can send you on the details to, where users can figure out. It's amazing. Like, what we're seeing is like mapping of stuff that I didn't even think could be mapped. And it's just it's really good from so I'm currently doing a master's in minutes in strategy, and I brought that up in one of the classes, and there's a big debate around how do you make it more academic. So, strategy is a interesting topic.
Let's make this less usable.
Yeah. But that is a big debate. Like, how do you teach strategy? There's definitely different methods, but Simon's trying to show you around a different one about value chain and what you can offer. and I think there was some effort to get Simon's. There was an academic paper written on it. I know I kind of wrote on it in my course, but I think it made sense because I passed. So it's fine, right? So yeah, I think the takeaway from it is just to try the most basic map of your product. It depends on where you are. Like, if you're a developer, what tools you're using, and it's really it's really a learning experience. All the tools are there, like the person I'm trying to reach out to is like that product manager or manager who's like new. They need to figure out where stuff, like learn why decisions were made and learn where you need to get to. And I think that's really important if you want to succeed. So
nice. What's next for you?
So I'm in terms of mapping, so I moved into what's called the platform and infrastructure team. So as you know, it's related to Kubernetes. Can't you tell how excited? So yeah, I've been trying to get that kind of built within Workday. So we have that single, we can show that we have that single abstraction there, I guess. Yeah. So like, we Workday in AWS, Workday wherever you want. That's kind of what everyone's really doing. So, so I'm responsible for making sure that is being stood up and ensure that we have the proper storage platform for that as well. So, yeah, we kind of did, like, you kind of do a mini mapping about choosing a technology. And I think that's an interesting one as well to say, hey, like, is it an enterprise supported solution? Is it, is it going to be just two guys on the phone to call for support, or is it a proper, decent community? Like, I don't know what your thoughts are on open source, but like, my only concern is that if the community disappears, it's a real problem with supporting it. And then, I think there's enough hype with Kubernetes to keep us going for a while.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it actually solves more than just spinning up VMs and that kind of stuff. So so currently I'm just trying to make sure that Workday continues to scale. And then continuing learning about mapping.
Cool. So if there's nothing else, how can people reach you?
So I guess you can reach me on Twitter or LinkedIn. So my Twitter is Aidan_Molloy. I think you can find me easy.
I'll add it in the show notes as well.
I'm well able to reply and talk to you guys about how we went through mapping. If you have questions about it, and what it's like being a product manager for a open source. Like, I find that's very interesting. How do you manage technically a third party product? Mm-hmm. What features do you need to build? And I'd love to talk about that again. That's kind of where I'm comfortable.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, you can on my LinkedIn. I guess you could just search for me. Because people I hope people listen to this and go, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like I said, I read that article a couple of times, watched a couple of videos, listened intently, and I just feel like I've just scratched the surface of understanding this. And it's not that it's so difficult to understand. It's all the nuances and how deep you can go and how deep you should go and how you should back away.
Yeah.
The
fact that you're thinking about that, I think, is a win in itself, right? So, like, that's really where, and I hope Simon wants to get to, right? So you think about, you're thinking about it, which is already the first step.
Yeah.
The map's just a tool, but the fact that you're thinking, what components should I put in, and you can flesh out with someone else. Like, the best thing I found was not doing it with another person to make sure that you're not in your little bubble going, everything's awesome and high value to my customers.
Yeah.
So I suggest it's definitely a team effort, because we found that was, different people have very different experience what they think of they're like, no, my product is a fully fledged product. Yeah, so it was good. It's a good example.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Wow, it was a pleasure.
I hope it made sense.
Yeah, I think so. It did for me. Okay. But please do, if you didn't get it in the beginning, which I haven't recorded yet, but I will, check out the blog post and at least some of the images so that it'll make a little more sense. But thank you, and thank you all for listening.
Until next time, remember, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.